Hey guys, this week's podcast features Chad Maslanka, Roastery Operations Manager for Spot Coffee. Chad came down, talked about his start in the coffee world, his roasting methods, and Buffalo's rising coffee culture.
Chad, thank you so much for coming down here and doing this. This is really cool. I just recently have started to pay attention to the coffee world, let's say. Like we had Kevin Purdy down here, and he kind of exposed me to, I guess, gourmet coffee, because I've never been a big coffee guy. Were you, you came here, I'm assuming, right from work?
Yeah.
And so your role at Spot is the head roaster?
Yeah, like technically my title is the Roastery Operations Manager.
Nice.
Which is just a big fancy way of saying I basically run the roastery.
Okay.
So anything, if you kind of think about my job as like the chef of a restaurant,
yeah, I'm
going to find all the ingredients, which would be the raw product of coffee.
Yeah.
Try to highlight those natural flavors and cook it. And then I run the production side of it, which is just the packaging and distribution in all the stores and everything like that.
Okay.
So it's multi-layered, but it's pretty straightforward when you think about it like that.
Yeah, that makes sense, actually.
Because everybody goes, what does a coffee roaster actually do? And beyond the obvious of roasting coffee, they just kind of go, I don't understand what you mean.
Yeah, yeah. So all of that, it happens at the Chippewa location?
Yeah. If you look down the Delaware side, there's basically like 3 buildings. Or like 3 bays, and 2 of them are of the cafe, and one of them is of the roastery, which is what we call the warehouse. But it's the roastery.
I think I've always seen that and kind of wondered what was in there.
Yeah, everybody looks in there and they say, why are there boxes up on the front? Or like, what do they actually do in there?
Yeah.
That's
kind of cool.
So eventually, because Spot's grown pretty quickly, we're going to find like some old warehouse and kind of do it the right way, and then move into more of an industrial neighborhood. So
I see.
So we can actually get forklifts and stuff like that. Like most of the coffee that comes in comes on pallets, and most of the bags weigh roughly 130 or 150 pounds, and there's 10 of them per pallet. So trying to move that around is not the easiest.
I was
thing
going to say, like, that's not a gigantic room, but also I can feel like that area of downtown can be like crazy busy, and like if a shipment comes at the wrong time, it just sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah, it's moderately claustrophobic. So it is what it is, but it's nice for what it is, because you can actually, like, recently through some of the renovations that I was talking about earlier, we've been trying to like update the roastery to make it a little more user friendly. Okay, which is just really a nice way of saying if somebody come in there, it's not just like this bleak warehouse. And we actually put like glass doors separating the cafe to the roastery. So now if you're in the cafe drinking your beverage or eating your sandwich or whatever, you can actually see what's going on in the roastery. I see. And not actually have to be present in there. So you get a little sneak peek actually of what's going on. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
So somebody, after I did the podcast with Kevin, somebody told me that they were getting into home roasting, like, themselves.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Is that like a burgeoning field, like home brewing, I guess? Or
I don't know. I mean, people have been doing it for quite a while. I mean, you've probably heard the term cowboy coffee, which was basically like a dude out in a field with a cast iron pan, and then roasting some coffee over a campfire, and then basically brewing it in a really bad method, and then drinking it right on the spot. And that's basically like what you think of like home roasting, but there's various levels of that. But the idea is just you need some fire, you need something to roast it in, and then drink it up whenever you get it. Yeah,
we're gonna kind of probably jump around all over on this conversation, but like the actual process of roasting, is there? I mean, there has to be like a skill in like knowing specific temperatures and beans act with other temperatures and vice versa. Like I'm assuming there's more thought to than I'm throwing this in an oven for 45 minutes and I'm just going to take it out.
Right. I mean, everybody kind of thinks you're baking cookies. You set the oven at 400, you put them in there for 10 minutes and pull it out. And that's like the absolute worst thing you could do. I mean, with the idea is like I always kind of ask my roasting students, like the person I'm training to help me roast.
Okay, so it's not just you in there.
It predominantly is me, but I've been working with a guy now for about 6 months who's doing exceptionally well. Nice. And is really just fit the mold perfectly, and he gets it all. But he hated originally when I was trying to explain answers to him, because they're all open-ended. Because there's no like, okay, do this now at this point, and do at like 320 degrees, do this. And
there's not a set manual.
Yeah, there's no manual, and it's all like the roasters are. It's like the secret guild. Like no one tells anybody anything, so it's like this long craft that you actually have to develop.
Yeah, nobody wants to give up their.
I mean, it's a bunch of secrets almost. Like you couldn't go right now on like like Amazon and find a roasting book. It doesn't exist. And it's like, I don't think it ever will, because no one's ever going to do it, because the people that have been doing this put their lives into it for, 30 years to make a product that they really stand behind.
Yeah, yeah.
So if we go full circle back to the actual question, it's kind of like cooking a steak.
Okay.
You can cook a steak many different ways to many different temperatures, all the way from rare to well done. Mm-hmm. And depending upon how you do that is really going to affect the final flavor of the steak. Obviously if you use a different cut of meat, it's going to taste different, but you want to do things at different temperatures and different things to get a different result.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's kind of really open-ended saying that, but it's like I don't want a well-done steak really any of the time, but it's like, that doesn't mean that I only want a mid-rare steak for the rest of my life.
That's true.
And it doesn't mean that there's only one way to cook a medium-rare steak.
Yeah.
So you got to think that the techniques you're using are really appropriate for the coffee you're actually cooking.
Okay.
And that's just the real easy way of saying that we're really going to mold the coffee into what we want it to be.
Yeah.
And it's really just, each coffee is going to have its own idiosyncrasies that make it what it is. So we want Costa Rica to taste like a coffee from Costa Rica, and we, so on and so forth all the way through.
Yeah.
And it's really trying to develop those flavors and bring them to the forefront. And you can do little tricks here and little tricks there to really develop those flavors. But ideally, you just want to identify what they are and bring them to the forefront.
Yeah. I mean, as you get like different beans and whatnot, do you have a little R&D lab where you kind of have to figure out
we geek out on coffee quite a bit. Well, you think that's really what I get paid to do, is to find coffee from, we import coffee through brokers. And really the reason for that is we don't want to have any financial liability of sourcing coffee from a country halfway around the world.
Yeah, yeah.
So like for example, we have 2 coffees right now we're featuring. One is from Ethiopia, one is from Sumatra.
Yeah.
I sure would like to go to Ethiopia tomorrow and to Sumatra, the week after that, to try to find these and bring a suitcase full of money to give to the guy, the farmer, but that really doesn't work so well. So we're going to use a middleman to do all that for us.
Yeah,
and then I can call those brokers and say, what's good? What do you got from this part of the country that's going to taste like this? And then we try to work out deals financially.
Nice.
And then once we actually get that in the building, then I can say, okay, what do I want to do with it? And in the same way I was talking about, cooking a steak, you can go through the whole gambit of, rare to well done, figure out what you like, and then figure out how to use it and really amplify those flavors.
Yeah.
Because the whole idea is we want to make something taste good. Like on the, I know it sounds really simple. It's kind of like,
it does make sense. Yeah.
But if we're going to line up 10 people in the current program that we have, we want 8 of them to really enjoy the house coffee that we have, which is for everyday drinkers. Kind of just like your chocolatey nuts and like really great caramelized sugar. It's good for everybody. It's not too dark. It's not too light. Keeps everybody interested, but doesn't overdo it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then we have, a decaf, which kind of complements all that. We have an espresso program, which is a whole nother animal. And then we have 2 other coffees usually. And one of them I was saying was Ethiopia, and the other one's a Sumatra, which are nothing like the house. and those are for like the people that really, they want to kind of step out of the box and get out of their comfort zone. And it's not like it's this weird, crazy stuff, but that stuff doesn't taste like Folgers, and it's not supposed to. And that's really like the fun stuff when you're talking about R&D, is like, how do we really develop those flavors to make them even more, charismatic and have more idiosyncrasies to what they are.
Yeah. So I guess like the one question is, so where was your start in the coffee world? Like growing up, were you a coffee drinker early on?
I was, yeah. I mean, when I was younger, like I thought coffee shops were like just this awesome place. Like everybody cool was hanging out there, you know? And it was just like, it was tons of like, everybody was full of knowledge that was there. You sit down, you had a cup of coffee, you talk about some cool stuff that you normally wouldn't. And it was like this big moment. It was like, great, And then, as that went on and on, I moved to North Carolina, and luckily I got a job with a friend of mine who ran a company, and it was a mobile coffee truck. You think of like, before food trucks, it was a coffee truck.
Yeah.
And it was a really bad job of us trying to do that. But that's what we did.
Were you trying to do like fancy stuff on the truck, or
yeah, we had a 3-group espresso machine, whole 9 yards. We could do our like full espresso bar.
Wow.
But at that point in time, I was just like, I need a job, you know? So it was like, I was just trying to do whatever I could, and I didn't recognize how hard it was to make a really great cup of coffee.
Yeah.
And now looking back, I was like, God, I wouldn't drink any of that stuff now, you know? But we used to buy our coffee from a local vendor in North Carolina, and eventually one thing led to another, and they were hiring, and they hired me as their production manager. So I ran the whole production facility.
Oh, nice.
And then slowly I worked my way into roasting, and then took over the whole roasting department, and then took over the green bean department, and then, you know, yada, 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 you know, fast forward, moved back to Buffalo, and just was a good, you know, mix with Spot. They needed somebody like me that could do all that. I was like, it's wonderful. You know, it's a good place to be.
Well, I mean, what was it about like the coffee per se that like just drew you in like that? Like
it was just kind of a really good fit. Like I had a pretty good kitchen background, so you think like if you understand culinary, you understand food and like how to really develop flavors, whether it's in, you know, it's just in regular food or beer or whatever you want, and you can understand what's happening in your mouth, identify the flavors, and really understand pairings of flavors.
Yeah, because when you're saying like the R&D and like testing different things, like you really have to have a crazy palate.
You do, yeah. I mean, and it's really fun, and like I mean, it'd be great. Like the best thing is to do a cupping, a formalized tasting with somebody that really doesn't like coffee, or really is not a coffee snob or a geek. Or
that could be me.
Yeah, you know, and like go in there, and it's remarkable if we start dissecting the whole gambit of all of it. Yeah, we're gonna have pretty similar answers. You know, even though like you may say. I don't know. You may say it's nutty, and I might say it's macadamia nut. You know, it's like I go like 1 degree closer. It's like I'm just specifying.
Yeah, it's kind of like almost wine, basically.
Well, the coffee flavor wheels actually developed very similarly to like the wine characteristics. You know, so when you look at them and you start talking about basic terms, with the exception of tannins, it's all the same stuff. So you start talking about acidity and bodily and aftertaste and everything like that. It's all parallel. It's just a matter of, you know, it's obviously coffee and it's not wine. So and you get through that coffee flavor, or you get through that wine flavor, and you can figure out what actually lies underneath.
Do you, like, if you are somewhere and you have a glass of wine, do you notice that your mind is still in that mode?
Yeah, I've kind of ruined my taste buds over the years. Like, my wife hates it. Like, wherever we go out to dinner, like, she expects me now to understand all the flavors and all the dishes and be able to replicate those at home on the first try. You know, and without a doubt, every time. So it doesn't even matter where we go anymore. It's like going out to dinner really isn't that fun anymore. Not because she ruins it, but just because it's like I'm dissecting everything.
Yeah. Well, I've eaten with like chefs who act the same way. Like, I can't go to a meal with a chef and have them just eat the food. No. They're like literally picking it apart. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, which is great, and I can really appreciate it for what it is. But in the same sense, like, man, can't we just eat some food? You know, just really, you know, enjoy being here and have some great company. Yeah, you know.
So how long have you been at Spot then, roughly?
About 1.5 years ish, something like that.
And so that roastery in the Chippewa location, what does that serve to? That's not just
all the cafes
all across the country?
All the spots, yeah. There are,
because I was gonna say there's a couple.
10 now, yeah.
Wow.
And so there's 2 in Toronto, 1 in Florida, 1 in Rochester, and 1 in Saratoga Springs.
Wow.
Which the Saratoga Springs is the most recent one to open. And then the rest of them are kind of clustered around Buffalo.
That's a lot of coffee to make.
It is. It's quite a bit. And we're growing like you know, a lot very quickly, and it's a lot to handle because like. With any kind of product like that, it's not like you can just buy more of it. It's like, you know what I mean? It's not like you just like go to the grocery store and you're like, cool, we got to get some more carrots or something like that. It's like, now we have to do the whole process again and again and make sure, I mean, really supply and demand and trying to figure out just good pricing based on that, because the bottom line is if it doesn't taste good, we're not going to sell it and we're not going to make any money. And it's like, you got to find that fine line to find the stuff that tastes really great and you can afford to buy it and you can produce it for, you know, a good price and make some money off it.
Has there been cases where like you thought that you had some bean from a certain source that you thought like everyone's gonna love this, and it
plenty of times. You just think, and like my job is to find those coffees, but it's like I'm one guy, you know. It's like not everybody's taste buds are the same,
exactly,
which is great. I mean, so it's like so I'm gonna miss some of them, you know. It's like I'm not gonna get all of them right, you know. But
there's none that are like particularly like, oh man, I loved that one. Like I don't get it.
Not really. That bad. Well, the ones that are like exceptional, like the people that appreciate are like, this is the best thing I've ever had. Yeah. And then the other ones are like, this doesn't taste like coffee. You know. So you get that fine line, but most of the time, I mean, I'm pretty seasoned in what I know should work and what's a stretch, and it's like the stuff that is a stretch. You just call it what it is. You say, this is not going to taste like everything else. And it's like, that's why we have it.
As much of a warning and education to the baristas as possible.
Yeah. And it's pretty straightforward, though. I mean, that's the program that we've set up there. So people have kind of come to expect it.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you want to get something out of the box that's a little bit different, you can go for those guys. And hopefully you'll be satisfied.
Yeah. So, like a lot of like the chefs and people we have down here, they pretty much say like their whole mindset is always in food. Like they work with food all day and then they go home and they're either reading about food or whatever. I mean, is that a similar thing for you? Or do you have like coffee blogs and?
Yeah, but I'm trying to, like we were briefly talking about earlier, I'm trying to like disconnect myself from some of that. Like
turn off the coffee.
Yeah. I mean, not because there's like too much caffeine or any of that stuff, but it's just like, you become all encompassed in one thing. You kind of forget about the rest of the world. And, I've got a 1-year-old daughter I'm trying to pay as much attention to as I possibly can. And,
that makes sense, yeah.
And a loving wife at home. And it's like, I want to spend a lot of time with them, and they surely do not want to talk about coffee 24 hours a day. So, yeah, I mean, it's hard to disconnect. I mean, especially because if you're passionate and you're into it, you kind of want to know what's going on multiple levels all the way through. And it's hard. Like, you just got to do that right balance. Make sure everybody's happy on all fronts.
That makes sense. What about like your home setup as far as coffee?
It's awesome. Well, it's basically the same thing that I have in the roastery. It's just I mean, people, they often forget that like making coffee is pretty simple. Yeah. It's 98% water. Yeah. So if you start with some great filtered water, you're going to start off on the right foot. So like, don't use tap water. Don't use Buffalo City water or something like that. Not that it's terrible, but it's just because you think if you're, if you have a soluble liquid that if you're going to take something and use water to extract it out of, if you're using bad water, it's going to taste bad.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Period. Like, so use some good filtered water. And I've been really into these clever drippers lately. Okay. Which is kind of like a cross between a French press and just like a manual pour over. Okay. And it's a total immersion brewer, which is just a fancy way of saying the water's going to be in the contact with the coffee the whole entire time. Okay. And it just looks like a little mini coffee pot that's made out of plastic. You put a paper filter in there, put the coffee in, let the water sit for the right amount of time. Yeah, yeah. I'm kind of dumbing it down. Yeah. But then you just
we'll have links to all these things so people can see them.
And then you basically put it on top of a cup and it drains out, and it's kind of like the best of both worlds out of everything. And it's a really cheap way. They're like $15.
Oh wow, that's really cheap.
Yeah, but they make really great coffee if you follow the procedure right. And if you think, talking about what I have at home, I just have like a ghetto water heater, that I bought from Target. It's like the only thing it does is boils water and turns off. And it's like I have that. I have a really great grinder. People often forget that grinding coffee is very important. Yeah, yeah. And just on a simple level, that if you think about the particle size, when you're grinding coffee, a really bad whirly grinder that has like one blade it basically just like chops it up and it's split.
That's what I was learning is like there's no uniformity to all the pieces.
That's what you want, consistent pieces, whether it's big or small, but you want them all to be the same size. Yeah, because you can imagine if you're pouring water over it and you're trying to extract the good stuff out of it. Yeah, it's not going to work if you got big pieces and little pieces all the way around. Yeah. So if you get a really great grinder,
what's your grinder of choice?
There's a million.
I've seen like the hand crank ones.
Yeah, the hand cranks are pretty fashionable these days. Everybody's into those. Personally, I'd rather push a button and have it grind it for me. But I do have a Hario Skirtin, which is pretty good. It's a hand crank one, and I have a Barazza, which is the grinder that I have at home that works really well. But it just makes really uniform particle size. Yeah. So when you're brewing the coffee, you can determine what that size is supposed to be based on what you want to get out of it, and make sure that the flow of water when it's passing through doesn't go too fast or too slow. Yeah, yeah. You can imagine if water's hanging on that coffee a long time, it's going to extract a ton of stuff out of that. Yeah, yeah. And conversely, if you think the other way, if it passes through really quickly, it's not going to grab all the good stuff out. So, yeah. But I've got a bunch of manual pour over stuff. I've got a really good just drip coffee maker that my wife uses, multiple times throughout the day.
I was going to say, like, does your wife share any of the coffee love, or maybe a little bit?
She actually likes the coffee more than I do. Like I don't have any. What do you want to say? Like, caffeine does nothing for me anymore.
Yeah, that's completely lost.
Like I don't wake up and be like, I need coffee to get caffeine. Like, I don't care. It does nothing. I could drink coffee all night long. It doesn't bother me.
Yeah.
And it's not because like it doesn't affect me, but I think it's more of a mental thing than anything else. Like, sure, it's a stimulant. It gets your blood flowing, but most people don't recognize that what it actually does is it blocks your sleep receptors. It doesn't make you more awake. It just fakes your body into thinking that you're not tired.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that weird thing, and that's why like all of a sudden everybody gets that crash.
Yeah.
And that's when your body says, oh man, we've just been faked out for like the last 3 hours, and you actually hit the wall.
Yeah.
So that doesn't do it. But my wife, she wouldn't get out of bed in the morning if there wasn't a pot of coffee there,
Nice.
So she's really into it. She doesn't want to like do all the manual drip stuff or anything like that. She just wants good, easy cup of coffee that she can do and, do the whole shebang in 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. She does grind her coffee fresh every morning. I finally got her to do that.
Nice.
She uses good water and
you've imparted.
Yeah. It only took almost a decade, but she notices a difference now. So
do you have that with like family and friends too? Like you try to sell them, but at one point you just give up?
Well, I kind of gauge people's interest. It's like if people go glossy when you start talking about it and they start looking at the ceiling or the wall or something, you just kind of like shorten it up. You're like, cool, we're done, and move on.
Yeah.
But, coffee's going to be as great as you want it to be. The more attention to detail that you pay to it, the better it's going to be all the way through. So, it's just an easy lesson going all the way through and through.
Yeah. Do you ever like go to like, do you pay attention to the gadgets and stuff because when I started to look into coffee stuff, like there was a world of gadgets and like in various pours or various everything.
What do you mean by gadgets in particular? Like because there's various brewing methods. And
like
you're trying to say that.
Like basically, like all the different brewing methods. I was watching like the Chemex and the pour over and like the fancy kettles that you can get that have the elephant nose, the handle. It just seems like there's every week, if I follow like a tech blog, like if I'm on Engadget or like Gizmodo or something like that, like it seems like once a month they'll do like a crazy coffee thing. Like, do you just try to keep up with the trends, I guess you should say?
Yeah, absolutely. But
I didn't know if there was like a convention or something, like coffee conventions.
There are many actually, and they're huge, and it gets ridiculous. Like everybody geeks out because it's really great to be around people that do that for a living. Like for me, it's like in Buffalo, I don't know anyone else that does my job. Like just because like I have a much more hands-on approach than some of the bigger companies where most of the stuff's like all automated. Yeah. So it's not like
I was gonna say I know there's that one thing off the Route 5, but it doesn't really look like a consumer friendly place. It just looks like a huge building.
Yeah. I think they basically do diners and things like that.
Yeah.
And it's not mocking it anybody.
No,
like
everybody's got their own sector.
Right. Everybody's got their own thing and they can do it their own way.
Yeah.
I just prefer, like, on any kind of coffee roasting equipment, everything's got to be hands-on, so you can make adjustments on the fly.
Yeah.
Because, like, if you asked any chef today, how long does it take to cook a steak, they'd all give you a different answer.
Exactly.
And they'd all say, well, the grill's better, or the pan's better, or this is better, or bake it, or what. I don't know. Just come up with
but even, like, knowing hot spots and stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's just like, you really want to know what's going on and manipulate your coffee batch by batch so you can really make sure it tastes great and really, optimize whatever's going on in that batch. And there's not, like, one formula. We're like, cool, we got this. Let's, plug it in B26, go.
Yeah, exactly. So have you ever attended any of these coffee
many
festivals,
times.
Basically?
Yeah, there's a big one annually. It's called the Specialty Coffee Association of America. It was just in Boston, actually, this year.
Okay.
They usually have one a year. It goes, usually flip-flops coast, East Coast, West Coast, just to kind of make everybody happy. Otherwise, it would always be in Seattle, and that would be the end of it. But that's kind of like the big one. And then there's 2 coffee fests, actually, too. One's in Chicago, one's in New York. And those are much smaller versions of that.
Yeah.
And they offer classes that are pretty awesome for the average person that goes there, or somebody that wants to start a business. Great way to get a crash course and everything without having 20 years of experience or something like that. And everybody geeks out there, so it's like if you don't walk away there like just like totally caffeinated out of your mind, you've done something wrong.
You know what's crazy is like I started following those recently, and I saw that like like they'll have those competitions,
Yeah.
like people post like recipes, and I didn't even know there was like a thing called a recipe, like seconds that you like let it steep and stuff like that. Like I was blown away by this whole world.
Well, that's what I mean. Attention to detail.
Yeah.
I think like everybody, like especially like my parents' generation, I think that's all kind of like lost, you know, where I think people of our age are really starting to look into the details, and you can kind of tell it's like, well, that doesn't work because of this, or we should do it this way because that'll happen. You know?
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, of course, like recipes are a great idea because they create consistency first off, but beyond that, you can really optimize the flavor of whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like recently, this week actually, the World Barista Competition was held in Australia.
Okay.
And a guy from U.S. won it for the second time now.
Wow.
And he's pretty awesome. He does great stuff, you know, and
yeah.
I'm sure he'll post eventually exactly what he did, like, you know, minute for minute.
The
on the
grams and everything.
Yeah, and it's great. And like they take it to a whole nother level because they're doing some pretty extraordinary things that you're not really capable of doing on a cafe level or in your house in the morning before you go to work.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like you got to find that nice balance of how do you make something really extraordinary but not take, you know, an hour and 20 minutes to actually make it.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, Spot's not necessarily the type of place that can take that much time per customer.
I mean, you would think if you walked in and you're like, I would like one coffee, please, and it's like it'll be 1 hour and 26 minutes. You know, you'd never go back. You know?
Yeah.
So you got to find that nice balance, and there's a lot of play on like individualized beverages, and that's really why espresso was so big, is because you're basically making a beverage for each person, as opposed to like batch brewers where you're making a bunch of coffee and then just, you know, dumping it out cup by cup. And that's why you see like these manual brewers coming in, where it's basically you can manipulate all the variables in the way you're saying, the grams or time, duration, or just the coarseness of the grind or something like that to really get to where you want it to go. And it's really fascinating to get the results because, I mean, it sounds like totally overwhelming and you're like, God, you're paying attention to all that. But you know, if you start looking at all those variables and you start changing them, you can really find what you like and really hit that spot every single time. And really, you know, make the flavors of the coffee come out, because that's the whole point. You know, you got to drink what you like, you know, and if it doesn't taste good, I mean, don't drink it. You know? Since you're sending out all of these bags to, you know, to Toronto and Saratoga, was it? Yeah, Saratoga.
Yeah. Is the roast date like a pretty big thing?
Yeah.
Like does it have to get there pretty quick and has to be used by a certain time and everything?
Yes. All of our stores have weekly shipments.
Okay.
That's the easiest way just to kind of keep everything efficient, keep it fresh.
Yeah.
And it's a really, I mean, most of the stores are in Buffalo, so if there was a problem,
you know,
that they ran out of coffee or something, it's like we're like 10 minutes away.
Yeah. I just figured, you know, now with expanding outward.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a challenge for sure, but I mean, like the good thing is with weekly shipments, that kind of buys us a little time, because not everything all has to be done on the same day or something like that. You can schedule accordingly.
Yeah.
But beyond that, the roast date is great. I mean, I want to drink really fresh coffee. It's not like it's going to kill you if you drink it that's like 6 months old, or a year old.
Yeah.
But it's just not going to taste that great anymore. I mean, it like all those little characteristics that really make the coffee taste great for what it is, they start to dissipate. So you think the further away from the roast date, the worse it's going to be. Yeah. I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus, but some of the big guys, I know for a fact, because when I lived in North Carolina, the one of the roasteries was not far from where I was. It was like 60 miles away. Yeah. And that was their southeast roastery.
Jeez. And that's gotta be.
Yeah, when we start putting labels on stuff like that. But if you have 16,000 stores globally, you're gonna have to start cutting some corners to make things work a little bit for you. Yeah. And I know for a fact that they started their Christmas run in March.
Wow.
So if you start thinking, if you're gonna get coffee that's 9 months old before it's even put on the shelf,
God,
I mean, you're gonna lose a lot of that flavor right off the bat. Even if it's the greatest coffee in the world and it's packaged properly and everything is perfect, you know. Yeah. So you start thinking about that, and you're like, whoa. And it's like, I would encourage you, go to the grocery store, like or wherever, even go to like the co-op over here. Look at the roast dates on some of that stuff. It's not going to be as fresh as you want it to be, you know? And it's not anyone's fault, but it's really hard to turn it over quickly. And at least that's one of the things we can control at Spot. It's like, if it gets over 3 weeks, throw it out, sell it, give it away, do something with it, you know? Don't brew it, you know? Like, don't serve it as coffee.
Yeah, because, it really...
I mean,
it's
we
not
should never
what
have a problem.
Exactly, and it's not what you want
No.
It's not a representation of what you're trying to present to the customer.
Right. If we're going through all this effort to really make a beverage taste great,
yeah,
and then we're going to use a really old product, you're going to ruin all that right off the bat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we try to make sure that's like really straightforward. All the dates are stamped on all of our big bags and in the actual retail bag. So
yeah,
I would encourage anyone, when you go to buy your coffee from anywhere, ask them when it was roasted.
Yeah.
If they can't give you an answer, don't buy it. You know? I mean, it's like saying to someone, it's like, when did you cook that meal? And if somebody can't remember, it's like, I'm not eating it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Yeah. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
That's so gross.
Yeah. I mean,
it makes sense
of
like
health problems.
No. It's just like, I mean, now it makes sense why people just douse those things with cream and sugar.
Sure.
Because at that point you can't taste anything.
No, I mean, all like those cool little things are gone, you know, and it's like, then it just becomes coffee.
Yeah.
Because as much as I don't like to say it, there is that coffee flavor, you know, and it's like, it's in ice cream, it's in all that stuff, you know, and it's like, I guess if you put 3 quarts of cream and a pound of sugar in there, it's probably going to taste like that.
Have you noticed over the last year and a half, the customer base becoming maybe more savvy or more interested in the, I don't want to say weirder things, but unique?
Yeah, absolutely.
Unique
I think people are really starting to pay attention to quality. Like, in obviously, if you can specify the farm in the country that it was grown in, like, I don't know, like, it gives people kind of an eye opener to say, wow, like, that's from Ethiopia and it's from this little tiny farm in Ethiopia. And it's like, I could show them a map and point to it and be like, yeah, that dude grew it right there, you know? I mean, you would think that it's probably going to be better coffee than just some generic, big brand thing that they're just, blending together.
Yeah.
And it's just really because if they're putting that much detail into figuring out where it came from, and that guy's really putting some love into the coffee to make it great,
yeah, we're
gonna carry that through as well. So I mean, I totally think, like, don't get me wrong, I think the average person still comes in and buys like what we would call the house coffee, but there is a bigger market for the atypical coffees. Absolutely.
That's cool.
Yeah. And it's really been a great thing for us too, because as a person who buys the raw product of coffee, you get stuff that's like all over the board, from like just like this, I don't know, this boring normal stuff to like this really crazy stuff. And it's like, where do you stand? And it's like, how do you find the right thing? And it's like, like what you were asking earlier, can you buy the outrageous coffee and try to sell it? And it's like, where do you draw the line? But I don't think there is a line anymore. People are willing to try it. They may not come back and buy it again, but they'll at least say that stuff was really cool, or I didn't really like that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a win-win either way,
Yeah. I mean, and it's, I think it's part of that whole foodie mentality that's growing, that people are interested in trying crazier things now and maybe more exciting things that they haven't had, which is, good for everybody pretty much.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, I keep saying the same thing over and over again. People should drink what they like, eat what they like, and it's figure out what your taste buds are and go for that. Like, I mean, sure, like, stretch the envelope every once in a while, but I mean, if you know you like something, buy it, eat it, drink it,
So we briefly touched on like the pour over style and things like that. Is there just I mean, is there any way that Spot would ever, do you think, get into that realm?
Yeah, well, we used to do it years ago.
Yeah.
The only problem with all that stuff that I can't wrap my head around is, in a big corporation, you're worried about your labor.
Yeah.
And if one drink takes 5 times as long to make as something else, how do you incorporate in there when you're only doing a couple of them here and there?
Yeah.
Because then it just becomes a burden. You start putting another person on as labor, and they're only doing one thing. And, but yeah, I mean, I would love to, like, especially in like off hours or something like that, where it's not like, let's face it, most of the coffee's drink in the morning.
Yeah. So I can only imagine. I've never been in Spot at like 8:00 on a Monday.
There's a lot of people in there. So you think you get out of that realm and you do it in the afternoon or something that, where it's a more personal thing. And maybe people are hanging out for a little bit longer and they don't mind waiting for a few more minutes and do something that, I mean, what I want to do is like, we're going to start doing basically like a roastery like demo at all the cafes.
Oh, nice.
Which is
just for like the public. So
so it's just like a fancy way of saying, I'm going to be standing at the door sampling stuff. And it's going to be like me with my little like coffee geek setup here.
Nice.
And being like, check it out. Here's what we can do. Here's how you can make better coffee at home. That's really easy. It's really straightforward.
Yeah.
And it tastes 10 times better. and ultimately you're only going to make a smaller yield of coffee, so you don't have to dump out half your pot because you don't want to make a full pot of coffee if you're only going to drink 8 ounces of it or something like that.
No, that sounds like a really... I was going to ask you, like, if there was any goals for the future of some type of, like, I guess, educational process, too.
It's tough. I mean, like, it's kind of a catch-22 because you want to educate your public because you want them to buy better coffee so you can get cooler stuff so that you just complete the circle, or the cycle. But in the same sense, like, it's really tough. Like,
you don't want to then not have them come to the coffee shop, basically.
Right. You know, it's like, you don't want them to take everything home and then, it's like, that's it. You never see them again.
Yeah,
but in that same sense, like, the people that are going to buy the coffee and actually bring it home to brew it are probably still going to come to the shop anyways.
Yeah, I mean, it's an experience still at the same point.
And that's really one of the things about cafes. It's like, great cafes are pretty cool places to hang out. I mean, they have great vibes, great people there. It's like it's a place where minds gather to do really great stuff, Yeah. And as long as you keep that, then I think everything will be okay.
Nice.
Nice.
Well, that's cool. So, like, roughly, do you know when those will be happening, or hopefully this year?
There's no definite date, but I would encourage anyone, really, if they're really that interested, pop into the roastery.
Yeah.
See if we're not knee deep in packaging, and we can start showing off some cool stuff.
Nice. So I guess we'll wrap it up. Like, is there anything else this year that you're looking forward to, or maybe not even this year, but in the future? Like, do you just want to keep
growing, organically, make sure that we're focusing on quality instead of just quantity.
Yeah.
Really producing some great coffees, making sure people understand that we're putting a lot of effort into making like a really great product that works really well, and hopefully that they can appreciate.
Yeah.
And really just make that translate all the way through.
Nice.
It's about the only thing we can do is just try to make great coffee.
Nice. Well, Chad, thank you so much for coming down here. It was really nice meeting you, and I am looking forward to trying the coffee that you brought over today. And I'll be sure to stop by soon and check out that roastery.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me.
No problem, man.